Hello everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Hi, hello. Welcome to a little chatty video that is just gonna be me hanging out at my desk, doing some updates to my book journals, and I wanted to hang out with y'all as I did so. We're gonna talk about some books that I read recently that I loved, maybe some ones that I didn't like so much. We're just gonna chat, because I haven't really done a wrap up in a while, so why not have just a little chat as we go through this? So let me get set up. Let's do this. All right, lads. I have previously gone through and already cut up everything, so because that was gonna take me for fucking ever. So we're just gonna go through and we're gonna update shit. So we've got the book journal and the media journal that are going to be updated today. We'll do the book journal first because I think there's more stuff in here to do. It's been an interesting reading year. I have officially read 6 sci-fi books towards my goal of 25, which is pretty cool because the last ones have been very recent reads, like May reads. I think I read Immaculate Conception in May. I can't really remember. We will find out as I go through this book, of course. But on this page, I usually do some little thumbnails to keep track of which books I do read because that is fun. These are so teeny tiny. Every time I cut them out, I'm like, oh my god, they're so small, but they're fun. So 6 sci-fi books, and I gotta say, the sci-fi books that I've read this year so far have been pretty good. The standout this year has definitely been Love Galaxy by Sierra Branham. That was definitely just such a banger. I mean, it was my most recent 5-star, and I absolutely fucking ate it up. I loved it so much. I did like a specific vlog for it, so if you want to go watch that, watch me rave about it. I believe it's 2 videos back. It was just so good. So imagine like a Bachelor Love Island situation type of TV show in a world where we have all sorts of different planets and different living conditions on these planets and what have you. Like, you know, if you don't have any money, you're kind of fucked, as is apt for dystopian society. And that mixed with this dating show, so we have like one contestant from every planet or region or whatever. They are brought together to be the love interests on this dating show for some royalty, and this is how the royalty has picked their like wives and husbands and whatever and partners for forever. This year on the dating show, we have a set of twins who are finding their forever match, and it's a boy and a girl, Spy and Nikki, and they end up finding on this like really far away planet this one girl named Temmie, who ends up being bribed by the sister to be on the show for her brother. But then Temmie and Spy have like the most delicious tension. It's phenomenal. It's so good. And then this book just kept getting more and more interesting, and suddenly there's dead bodies and like shit's going wacky. I loved it so much that I am claiming it as my book of the month for May, because I don't think I'm going to be reading anything better this month. I really don't. So I fucking loved it. If you love a book full of really interesting world building and politics, because of course it's more than just a dating show, this show that they're putting on. It is a political dance essentially with all these different leaders and countries that have put their women into the show, women and non-binary folk into the show and whatever. And there's some drama with an ex that's on the show. There's like, you know, the prince has promised to somebody already who's on the show. It's crazy. There's so much going on, and I fucking ate it up. And of course, April, we also read Red Winter, but I'm going to save that one for later to talk about because I have a whole page in my media journal that I want to do. But yes, these have been my 2 recent 5-star reads. I fucking loved them. Do I put them here or do I put them here? I think I'm gonna put them up here. My reading has turned around a little bit. Like, I mean, this year hasn't been terrible, but there haven't been like much like last year. It hasn't been like super bangers for a long time because we had, of course, 2 rereads that ended up being 5 stars, and then only The Everlasting, which I read in February, ended up being a 5-star this year. Everything else I've read has been below that. So not like I've been reading bad books or anything. Like you can see here, The Princess Knight by Kate Jacobs that I read, which is the book of the month for March. I ate it up. It was van fucking tastic, but I think I gave it 4.5 stars. Just not quite a new fave. Although I do have this thing in my head that I've kind of realized, and I kind of want to do like an introspective maybe on it, is I rate things 4.5 stars so easily because I'm like, I just don't know if it's a new favorite, and then I like hum and haw about it. And I genuinely think that like a lot of these books that I rate 4.5 stars would be 5 stars on reread. And I'm like, maybe I should test that theory later in the year. I think I mentioned that in a vlog recently of like the possibility of testing that theory and rereading some 4.5 stars to see if they are actually 5 stars for me, because with The Everlasting, it was immediate, yes, I want this tattooed on my body, 5 star. But then things like Japanese Gothic, which I read recently, I think I read it in April, I am like, oh, that was fucking amazing. It was such a masterpiece, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, 4.5 stars. Like, I don't know why I can't just say it was a new favorite 5 star. But I think, honestly, I do think that there are some books out there that like genuinely need a reread to be solidified as a favorite, which is also what I've done with like Gideon the Ninth, for example. Reread that a bunch of times to make it a 5 star, and then also to make it a new, like the favorite book of all time kind of a thing. And then there's some books that you read, like Empire of Exiles, that just are top tier favorite immediately. You know, some books deserve the reread, I think, just to see if they are a 5 star or not. Okay, so in April, I ended up reading 11 books, I think. Yes, I read 11 books, which was my best reading month this year so far. Like this year, I have been looking at a lot of like 6 books, 5 books, what have you. Do I have those numbers? Hold on. So I can give you accuracy. Yeah, we read 6 books, 7, so no 5s, but 6, 7, 7, and then April we read 11. So like a good jump forward. In May, I think I've read 5 so far. I've already done my June scrapbook thing. Yes, I've read 5 in May so far. And today is May 21st, so I really don't know if I'm going to be reading any more than like 6 or 7 books again in May. But hey, who knows? Maybe this weekend I'll read a ton of books and just knock everything out of the park. Who's to say? In April, I also read a bunch of cozy books, which was very, very fun. And I think I really needed that weekend, that I read Half a Soul, Kill the Beast, and The Enchanted Greenhouse all in one. I read it in a reading vlog or whatever. I needed that reset of my reading to just stop caring so much about what I was reading and read something that I really, really wanted to read, or like what my soul was calling me to read. Just like let myself read these wonderful, amazing, cozy books. These healed me. Like I loved them so much. 4.5 star, 4 star, and a 4 star. Just so good. Exactly what I needed. I think that really turned my reading around in April and really got me in the reading mood. And then the cozies that I read after that, Dustin J. Munden's The Recipes for an Unexpected Afterlife and Heather Fawcett's The Mystical Cat Shelter. I didn't love these. I mean, Dustin J. Munden's was okay. I gave it 3.5 stars, but the Heather Fawcett really tanked for me. I don't know if that's like just the vibe of the book, but I think I picked the best cozies to read right off the top, and they just went a little downhill from there. But that's okay, because then I also realized that I needed to mix in some different genres or different subgenres. So I went back to my epic fantasy with reading The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma, which I also gave 3.5 stars. I think it's a very, very solid book. I've talked about this in a couple of my reading vlogs recently, but I do believe it just needed a little bit more polish and maybe a couple more edits. But I do believe it was self-published before it was picked up by Orbit. And I've noticed now that I've read the second book as well in that series, I noticed a huge, huge uptick in quality between the first and the second book. So I think it's just up from here, you know, when you have a team behind you rather than just self-publishing it yourself. Sometimes it's hard to get exactly right and concise, and you just need that team outside of you to help you with that kind of stuff, right? So I don't know, but yeah, I enjoyed The Phoenix King, and I'm glad I continued on to The Burning Queen, because The Burning Queen was a fucking banger. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think it was really, really well done, and a fascinating like character study, because we have something that I really enjoyed in Sabaa Tahir's The Ember and the Ashes quartet. In one of those books, I think nearing the last, like the third and the fourth book, I think that it ended up being like just the most fascinating downward arc of a book character type situation. And The Burning Queen really did that well as well. And I think, like, I just don't see that kind of an arc very often, like the downward spiral into villainy or being beaten into the dust kind of a thing. So it's really interesting to me, because it makes for such a satisfying read to see these characters go through these things and also then claw their way back up, and whether or not they become that villain and they embrace that villainy, or, you know, what they do to then become better in the end of it, right? I don't know. I really enjoyed The Burning Queen, and I think that trilogy is going to be phenomenal. And honestly, if you like books like Jasad Heir and the Jasad Crown by Sarah Hashem, definitely pick up The Phoenix King and The Burning Queen, because I think you'll love them. And it is a trilogy. The third book is coming eventually, but I highly recommend it. I really do. And it's honestly one of the most unique fantasy worlds that I've read in a really long time, because it is not just traditional medieval fantasy, right? Which is something that I had a problem with in the first book, because I don't think it was well done in cohesiveness to the story, with the tech and like the sci-fi level world melding with this like ancient prophecy and magic and royalty and stuff like that. Like whenever I have royalty in books, especially fantasy books, I immediately equate it with medieval Renaissance vibe visuals for a fantasy book, right? And that is the typical Western fantasy book that we see, is this medieval type of fantasy world, right? My books are in that type of world. The world in The Phoenix King and The Burning Queen is so fascinating because it has this high-tech level sci-fi world melded with this ancient prophecy and gods and Indian mythology and all this kind of stuff. So it is really fascinating, and I think it does it perfectly well in the second book. The first book I found a little jarring, because every time I remembered, or every time the book reminded me of the tech, there was like holotech and some fun like game suits and whatever, and there's drones and all sorts of stuff like that, like spaceships almost, but like on land spaceships, all this sorts of stuff. Anytime it reminded me that those existed, I was like, oh, right. I was pulled a little bit out of the story, but I think in The Burning Queen, they did it very well. Continuing my cozy type of reads, I did end up also picking up India Holton's second book in her Love Academic series in May, which was so fun, because I think it ended up being my favorite India Holton that I've read so far, simply because I have this thing when I read an India Holton book, I go in knowing I'm going to have so much fun reading it, because her prose is so funny and lighthearted, and just it doesn't take itself seriously, and it's so well thought out, and it just like the sentences themselves are such a ride, and her wordage and her choice of like tone is just so fun. And so I know going in, I'm not going to have a bad time. I just know going in. But her previous books that I've read her first two books in her other trilogy. I want to call it The Lady Scoundrels, but I don't know if that's exactly what it's called. I've read the first two of that trilogy, and also the first of the Love's Academic with the Ornithologist's Guide to whatever. That one, all three of those to me have very, very similar love interest couples and dynamics, which is so fun, because we have that like rake banter, like the man is a rake, the woman is a tornado quirky girl vibe, and it is always this sort of like bantery, not, I wouldn't say enemies to lovers vibe, but it is a very close, like they dislike each other at the beginning, but they find each other incredibly hot the whole time, and it's this like push and pull of like will they, won't they, all that kind of stuff. But they become so similar, because they're all like, he's a rake and she's like this new one, this, it's not her newest one, there is a brand new one in this trilogy that's come out that's also a different vibe. It's like a dark academia spin on the India Holton, which I'm very interested to read, because it involves a character that we meet in this book, and it just seems so fun, like a dark academia in India Holton style. Yes, please. A dark academia in India Holton style. Yes, please. But this one, we had a different male love interest vibe. We had a little bit more of a neurodivergent vibe. Our main character, I don't remember her name. That's another thing about India Holton's books. I do not remember the characters' names at all. They vanish from my brain immediately for whatever reason. I don't know. But the female main character, she is a whirlwind, a tornado, and at the beginning of this book it becomes very clear that she married this man for a reason. Like it's a marriage of convenience kind of a thing that failed day 2 and they haven't spoken in a year, but these two people are professors and they have to go on this trip together to help this like unstable magic type situation. And instead of being a rake, the guy is a grumpy little fucker who just doesn't know how to have a conversation. And I think that change in dynamic just really worked for me. I usually don't like a second chance romance or whatever, but I do enjoy a marriage of convenience trope. So I'm like, it was so fun. It was genuinely so fun. And I read it so fast, I couldn't tell you if there was pacing issues, but I had a great time. So I loved that. And I think it was a good cozy romantasy. So fun. fun. And I highly recommend India Holton's books if you love a good banter-filled read. And of course, you don't have to read them in order either. I just like to because I'm a little bit anal about that stuff. Anyways, they are like a companion series like my books are. But yes, I really enjoyed reading that. I have also read Immaculate Conception this month by Ling Huang, which was fine. I don't know. It really wasn't for me. It was one of those books that I was like, oh, I wish I had read this with my book club because we usually read like weird lady books, and this was definitely a weird lady book with lots of obsession and this fuck. It was so odd to me. I also read it in a weekend vlog, so you can go watch that if you want more information on that one. But it again, it's not my kind of book. But I listened to the entire audiobook. It was the first book that I read this year that I read exclusively on audio, which was very fun. And it was good. I guess. I don't know. I just it didn't hit for me. It's just not my genre of a book. I think I gave it 3 stars. Just not my thing. Also, I have been reading I read that one because I have it. Obviously it's off my physical TBR, which I have been doing very good on. Look, I've read 21 physical TBR books, and this doesn't include any of those unhaul books that I did earlier this year. This is actually ones that I have finished, and this also doesn't include any DNFs. So I'm very happy with this number. I'm very happy with this number. But I'm talking about Ling Huang's Immaculate Conception. It is also sci-fi. It is very literary fiction sci-fi with like heavy focus on the obsession of this relationship between these two artistic women who, like, our main character is absolutely obsessed and so envious with her quote unquote best friend. And it's that relationship, how that is established, and how like each of them are dealing with their own mental issues in this world that is so dystopic and so falling apart. It is a fascinating read, and I do recommend it if that kind of a read is up your alley, like if you love a weird girl book. But it wasn't really for me. And I have now read 2 Octavia Butlers this year, and I did enjoy. I can't say that I enjoyed either of them. I think I gave them both 3.5 stars. There's something about an Octavia E. Butler that I know going in is going to be so hard of a read, difficult, and like including content that I may not necessarily want to be reading. And it's not necessarily like I'm having a fun time reading these books, but I know they're good, and I know it's good to be reading them. Like, I absolutely ate up Parable of the Sower when I read that last year. It was so fucking fantastic. And I'm so excited to read things like Kindred and Fledgling. Like, I have other books of hers on my TBR, but yeah, Wild Seed was fascinating simply because it is an interesting play of immortality and how that would, bring up in 300 years of this relationship study between these two people. But there is some really wild content, like lots and lots and lots of incest, which I was not prepared for. As I don't think anyone is, to read a book where there's like, it's unflinchingly included. So anyways, but yes, those are some of the books that I've read. In April, I read Ively's Houseman's Unending, finishing up that, Duology, Half a Soul, Kill the Beast, The Enchanted Greenhouse, Destin J. Munden's Recipes for an Unexpected Afterlife, The Phoenix King, Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett and Japanese Gothic, and Wild Seed and Entwined by Hannah Long, which I ate that shit up. You guys know how much I love Hannah Long. Absolutely loved it. And then, of course, Red Winter, which was another 5-star. So far in May, I have read 5 books, as I said. I've read Immaculate Conception, India Holton's book, Love Galaxy, and I also read Moon Soul by Nathaniel Lescombe, which was a sweet, soft, sigh, gentle, wonderful little book. Highly recommend that. If you like a book like with the same kind of a introspective vibe as like Psalm for the Wild Built, I would try this out. It's not the same at all. I wouldn't recommend it as like a comp to Psalm for the Wild Built, but I find that they gave me both like a very similar feeling with the introspectiveness and like, burnout and thoughts about what am I even doing with my life kind of vibe. So there's that. And then, of course, The Burning Queen by Aparna Burma. I am currently reading an arc of The Thief and the Traitor Bride by V.L. Bovalino, which is the second book in a standalone companion series by V.L. Bovalino, which starts with The Second Death of Locke, which it's one of my favorite books ever. So I'm so excited to have that arc. I also am reading a library book called The Griffin King by Sarah Omer, which I am like 60 pages into and I'm bored by, but I'm gonna give it a good shot because I feel like it's just been setting up for everything so far, and I just don't care about I don't care about the characters or anything. So we'll see how that one goes. But yes, that's kind of the vibe. I would love to know my beautiful friends, what some of the books you've been reading are that you've been loving and eating up. The three that I can really say that I have absolutely eaten up and loved and adored recently have been Love Galaxy, which I've talked about already, Japanese Gothic, which is that 4.5 star that might be a 5 star if I reread it, and A Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. I don't think I would recommend all these books to everyone. I would only recommend them, especially Japanese Gothic and Red Winter. I would only recommend those if you like gorier fantasy or gorier horror books because they are drenched in blood. Japanese Gothic was absolutely fucking awesome, which I'm going to talk about more when we get into my media journal. But the whole time I was just like, oh my god, this is so drenched in blood, holy shit. Especially near the end, there is a scene where one of our characters is underneath a deck witnessing something that the other character is going through in their timeline. If you've read the book, you know what I mean. It's kind of crazy. They get absolutely drenched because someone gets beheaded above them, so they get fucking soaked in blood, and I'm just like, this is so much, holy fuck. And it's so cinematic. Like, it read to me like watching a video game because I am someone who loves watching video games. It just especially stuff like Silent Hill and Resident Evil and stuff like that. So I absolutely ate that shit up. It was fantastic, but I definitely do only recommend it if you love gory stuff. Anyways, I'm gonna quickly paste these little baby thumbnails in here because this is my all the books I've read list, and I like to keep all my thumbnails in here, and I just have to make sure they're in the correct order. So let me do that fast. We'll do a little time lapse, and then we'll go to my media journal. I realized that I accidentally printed 4 extra baby thumbnails. Whoops. Oh well. Let's get into Yield Media Journal. There's a lot in here that I have yet to actually fill out or do, but I think, yeah, like I haven't done the stamping of many of these names for books because usually I stamp them out or I write some of it and stamp the rest. I will do the stamping at some other point. Today we will do just gluing, if you will. Some gluing. There are some interesting things in my media journal that I've noticed recently as well. I, one, realized that it was taking up a lot of space because I was giving like a page to every book kind of a thing, at least. And I decided, which you will see in a bit here, I wanted to give like some of the books that I absolutely love. I kind of like doing this like little scrapbooky thing like I did with Sarah Beth Durst's The Enchanted Greenhouse. But sometimes when I have a DNF, I'm like, well, that's so little space given. I don't really want to just waste all these pages on these DNFs. So I decided to split up the pages a little different, especially if I'm reading a book that I'm like, oh, I don't really have that much thoughts on this book. I don't have a full page of thoughts to fill out. How am I going to do that? I don't want to just leave a bunch of blank space. So I decided to divide up some pages in the book as well as I'm going, depending on my vibe and my feeling. When I start reading a book, if I decide to like finish it all in one sitting, whether I then do that and then I don't have like a midway through thought write down, because that's what I do sometimes is if I'm reading a book and I'm starting it one night and then I'm going to continue it the next day, I'll like do like a prelim thoughts type of thing. But sometimes I just read the book all in one and I don't stop to think as I'm reading it, or I don't stop at like the 100-page mark to talk about it or whatever. So I end up just zooming, or I read a book like Japanese Gothic and I have like quotes that I want to include, things that are really interesting, and then things I know for sure, like just like a lot more to think about, especially stuff like Wild Seed by Octavia Butler. So those books get a page or 2 pages, or even earlier on in this book, 3 or 4 pages, right? If I have a lot to say about them. At some point, I was like, okay, some books just don't make my brain work like that. So I decided to, at some point in here, cut up the pages a little bit, especially like Immaculate Conception, I didn't really think that much about, so I filled only this much of it. And then I was like, oh, like let me try another one, which ended up being a DNF. And then the India Holton, I just had no thoughts because I was like, this was just fun. Woohoo. And then Aparna Verma's The Burning Queen, I did end up using about a page's worth, but then I was like, okay, well, we have a half page here. Let me do that again. And then Moon Soul only ended up using half a page as well. So I'm just like, we can do that as well. It's my media journal. I can do what I want with it. And then sometimes because I have these extra little spaces, I do enjoy adding in just extra art I can find online, or if I really like the cover art, I'm like, yeah, this is the vibe. I will add that in a little bit at the bottom. So I printed off as part of my journaling stuff today that I got from Staples. I printed off a piece of the cover art, the house that the story revolves around, because I think this is just stunning art. I love it so much. Genuinely, guys, I love having a media journal. I think it is so fun. And as someone who doesn't really consume a lot of media outside of books, no, I do. I consume a lot of media outside of books. But like books is my main thing that I think about and I talk about all the time. Having a place to like put my thoughts in is really nice, and it actually is changing the way that I think about books a little bit, because I'm actually thinking about what I'm reading a little bit more, rather than just like zooming through a book and then like a week later I'm like, I don't remember what the fuck that book was about. Sure, there are still books like that because they just are not memorable books, but like some books I'm like, I love having this ability to think out my, like, just to think out my thoughts. That's such a weird way to, but like put my thoughts down, really like think about the books and interact with the book in a really fun way. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy being able to do that. And I do have some bits at the back here, like I've shown you guys previously in previous videos. I have extras. So this is other stuff that I want to talk about, like Animal Crossing, when that was big at the beginning of the year because of their update that they had. And then I was like really into writing content for a couple days there. And then Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights with Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights. That was a whole thing. Pacopia, of course, and then Resident Evil, because I was really into that after Resident Evil 9 came out. I haven't played either of these games, but I love consuming the content around them. So I had to talk about that in my book, think about it. The Other Bennett Sister. This was really just me wanting to look at Donald Finn forever and ever and all the time, because Donald Finn is just the blueprint, really. And then when Noah Kahan's album came out, I did a live like reaction to all the songs as I was going through, which is really fun. And I think because this is the last one that I did, I'm gonna go back in and write, now that I know and I've watched like interviews and watched other people react to things and people talk about them on the internet, I know the context of the songs now, rather than just like me listening at the first time. Because a lot of this was me listening to his album on first listen and going, wow, he's very mad. And then realizing that actually the majority of these songs on this album is not from his point of view at all. It's him imagining what other people are thinking about him. And I just think that is such a fascinating thing. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive on that as well. But I do have a little bit of space near the back here because I don't have a lot of things to talk about with media like this. A lot of times it's all books for me. It's all books for me. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about that. I just love it. I love it so much. So I highly recommend you guys get yourself a little like commonplace journal, even just a little chuck it around journal. It doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be anything. You can make it whatever you want and just yap to yourself about stuff that you're consuming, that you're reading, that you're watching, that you're listening to, because I think it's just such a fascinating way to, examine literature. I have such a great time with this and I love it so much. Anyways, I don't know what I'm doing with this page here. I had the idea to print out the wolf on the front of the Red Winter cover, and this took me 20 minutes to cut out, and I didn't even end up cutting out his whole beard because that was a lot. But I don't know, but this is very like the colors of the book and like the vibe of the book. It is blood drenched. Also, don't read this book if you don't like hearing the words like cock and erection and stuff like that, because there's a lot of erect beasts in this book, and it's a lot. There's a lot of sex in this book, a lot of profanity and whatever, but it's also such an interesting book. Okay, let's talk about this book, because I have waited for this moment to talk about this book. I loved The Red Winter. And what I really loved about it, I actually had a guy on Hinge ask me, because we were talking about books, but I told him about Red Winter and he asked me like, why do you like it so much? And I was like, oh, that's a good question. And I think it's because I love a goofy little book. And I've talked about this in I say that after describing this book as incredibly like horny and bloody and whatever. I don't even think it's horny in the way of like smut would be horny, just like, wow, there's a lot of dicks on this page. Like, it's just a lot. It's a lot. I described it in my video about my perfect books, about the fact that I love a book that just has interesting narration and like an interesting character situation. I love a little interesting book, I love a little book with a quirky guy. I love weird narration and all of that. We get that with this book. Holy shit, do we get that with this book? Because our main character is an immortal guy who made a deal with a devil, essentially, or a demon, or whatever the fuck that guy is. He's fun. Sarmodel is a great character. And our main character, Sebastian, has like such a cast of characters around him. Like he has his not a, what is she? She's a succubus, who is under his employ, quote unquote employ. She has a pact that she must fulfill, so she's basically his indentured slave kind of vibe, and she is so funny. Livia is a fantastic character. She's also extremely horny because she's a succubus, and it makes for some really funny moments in the book, I will say. But we have our main character Sebastian, who is writing this book as a frame narrative, and I love frame narratives. Okay. Frame narratives are my favorite thing. I love them so much. They're so fun. It's so fun to conceptualize a book like a frame narrative to me. As I said, I love a weird little narration. I love a moment that takes the storytelling to another level. This book has footnotes. I didn't think I loved a footnote. I fucking love a footnote. And I just had so much fun with this book, because not only do we have our main character who's a funny little guy who has a funny little guy living in his head, and Sebastian is so witty and dry, and the way that he tells his story is so fascinating, and I love that, because not only is it a frame narrative, we have Sebastian who's in modern times putting together this story about this moment that happened 20 years after this original event. So it's a frame story inside of a frame narrative. Like it's because there is a moment in this narrative that he's telling, that he's writing all this down from memory or whatever, that Sebastian meets the son of his ex-lover, who has come to be like, bestie, we need help again because the beast is back, and we need you because we know that you were, quintessential in fighting the beast the first time. And so he goes on this trip with this kid, essentially, and like they're finding out things about each other and all this kind of stuff. And as they're going on, the kid asks Sebastian to tell him the story of the beast of Gévaudan, and like this night that they defeated this beast. And it is this moment because he's like, yeah, my father never talks about it. So we have Sebastian then going, okay, let me tell you, and like chapter by chapter he'll tell the kid, I don't remember his name, Sebastian is telling this kid about the time then. So we have also a change in like font physically in the book, and it is a step back in time again. So it's like that kind of a frame narrative inside of already a frame narrative, and I thought it was great. And we have footnotes, and then we also have interstitial type situations with Livia putting her shit in there and like telling her story, which is like even farther back in history, which is the like event of like the creation of this beast. And it's like this it's fascinating. I fucking ate it up. It was so good. I loved it so much. I ate it up. I knew immediately the way that it was written, the footnotes, the tongue-in-cheek. The audiobook narrators were amazing. One of the audiobook narrators for Livia's interstitials is Imogen Church, who is one of my favorite audiobook narrators of all time and is the narrator that I want for my books one day. I just think she is phenomenal. But I loved this book. I thought it was so good, despite not even despite all the gore and the blood and the cocks and hands and whatever, but like genuinely, I thought it was phenomenally well done. And I think it was such an interesting story. And I want more from this world. I want more from this author. I want more stories from Sebastian, even though this specific story, I understand why this is a standalone, because this is not Sebastian's story. In this, it is Antoine's story. Like Antoine is so specifically, which is his lover from the past, is so specifically at the heart of all of this that like there's really nothing else you can say after this is done. Although I think it would be really fun to visit another story in this frame narrative way from Sebastian, because Sebastian is immortal and he is just hanging out with his demons, and I think it's great. Anyways, I just fucking I ate that book up. It was so good, and I highly recommend it to anyone who really likes a weird little historical frame narrative with lots of blood. I think it's just fascinating. That's a weird way to describe that one, but I genuinely do recommend it if you are interested. But anyways, yes, we've finally reached the page where I have 4 books on one page. Because sometimes I just don't have a lot to say about books, or I DNF it. I DNF'd Black Salt Queen. So I'm up to 8 DNFs this year, I believe. I was reading Black Salt Queen from the library, and this book just really didn't work for me. I think it was because the narrator of the audiobook was kind of atrocious. It felt like I was reading a YA book or a children's book almost, because the tone of the narrator of the audiobook was so children's book-esque, and then suddenly there's sex, and I was like, this is not the vibe I want from this darker book. Because like I read a little bit like of like the book on its own without the audiobook, and it still wasn't for me. But I think that darker book should have had a different tone of narrator, different voice, different whatever. So it just didn't work for me, but that's all right. I don't mind DNFing. I don't know. You guys know I don't mind DNFing books at all. So I will just yoink them out of my house. I have no mercy when it comes to books like that. Also, another one, just like Japanese Gothic, I printed off a little bit of the cover to include because the cover art is so gorgeous. I needed to include our two girls, Spy and Tammy, and it fits perfectly. I'm so excited for this series. Oh my god. This is one of those moments where I was like, fuck, I wish I hadn't gotten into this book, Love Galaxy, as quick as I did, because it's a debut. It just came out. So I'm gonna have to wait so long for the second one. Crazy. Anyways, I think that brings us to the end of that. It does. Oh my goodness gracious. But yes, I've read some really interesting books lately. I've really been liking, I've been sitting in my sci-fi era for a couple little days here. I don't know what it is. I think just wanting to read more sci-fi. I'm like, yeah, let's just dive in. I've been reading some bangers. I didn't mention much of Entwined by Hannah Long in this video, but I thought it was so fun. I love Hannah Long's writing so much, and her world building and her descriptions. They are some of my favorites. Like, this is why she's one of my favorite authors. And this book specifically is so fascinating because of the magic system in this and how it is entwined, lol, pun intended, into the story and the characters and that whole thing. I really like this. If you like reading books that are, is the term flintlock fantasy? Maybe not flintlock fantasy, because flintlock is piratey more so. This is definitely Gilded Age like fantasy. It feels like we're walking around London, even though it's not actually London. It has a different name for it. It's a very similar world to ours, just magic, of course. And that's, there's guns and there's maybe a little bit of flintlock, but Gilded Age fantasy. I loved the vibe of this so much. Yes, highly recommend. Yeah, it's been so far a really interesting reading year. I think I've had a great time with a lot of these books. Sure, there's some books that I'm just like, nah, no thanks, but I've been really good at DNFing this year for that reason. So I've been really enjoying my books that I've been reading. Oh, and I finally watched Legally Blonde the other day. If you saw my weekend vlog, I watched Legally Blonde, and it was a fucking banger. Love that movie. So highly recommend The Princess Knight because it's so inspired by Legally Blonde. Lots of really interesting books that I've picked up this year so far. And I love having the ability to kind of just play with the pages and write whatever the fuck I want, because a lot of the stuff in here I wouldn't include on like a Goodreads review because it is spoilery or whatever. And it's just a lot of my like brain working things out. I can show you guys, because doing this, flipping through, there's no way you're reading my writing. Probably like it's a fucking mess. If you can read some of it, good for you. But I love having a book like this. This is going to be so fun to look back on in a few years. This has been so fun to have, especially when I'm reading books that are a little bit more intellectual, like the Octavia E. Butlers, like Wuthering Heights. Like the more interesting, intricate books need this moment of like, oh, let me think this through with my pen in hand, which is kind of bringing me back to like university type stuff. I don't know. I'm having a great time with this media journal. Truly, highly recommend getting yourself a media journal or a book journal or something to just track your brain in, because it's been amazing, and it's one of my only books that hasn't been like super filled up with like scrapbooky stuff, even though it's kind of getting there with some of those pages. But anyways, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me as I yap and fill out my couple little book journal pages that I needed to fill out. I think this was a little fun video. I haven't really talked about the books that I've been reading recently in like a sit down video or anything other than my vlogs, so I thought it would be a little fun to do. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.